This could very well go wrong very quickly.
Welcome back to the Malt Miller YouTube channel, Homebrewers. And in this video, Martin and I have been doing some experimentation with some new yeast strains from WHC Lab, and we're going to show you just how they performed on a split brew. Now, just over a week ago, Martin and I had a rather interesting brew day. More to come on that in a minute. But the beer that we brewed was a 40-litre batch of a West Coast Pale Ale that I designed, because what we wanted to do was test out these new yeast strains from WHC and see how they perform side by side on a split batch.
So the two yeast strains we used were High Voltage, which is a super clean kind of low ester yeast. You know, that's going to be great for pseudo lagers or West Coast beers.
Yeah.
And then the second yeast is Mango Madness. Now that is a super packed, juicy, stone fruit, estery yeast. So two total ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, really interesting. But before we jump into tasting how the finished beers have turned out, let's take a look at how brew day went. Martin, what are we brewing today?
Beer.
Beer. What beer?
Your beer.
My beer. Do you know anything about what we're brewing today?
Not at this stage.
Come on, Martin, we're brewing a West Coast Pale Ale, aren't we?
West Coast Pale Ale, two different styles of yeast.
Yeah.
Split batch.
Split batch.
G40.
G40.
Let's get on it.
Right, do you want to grab your grains? They're down there by your foot. We've got ourselves nice and heated up already.
That ton of water. This could very well go wrong very quickly.
Right, so how much grain we got going in? 10 kilos, yeah? Yeah, it is 10 kilos. I've worked it out.
It would seem that way.
Right, come on in. You got a mash pad already?
Not yet, no, because I'm going to watch and see how much water flows out of this thing. There is no way this is going to fit in here.
Are you a little bit concerned that we're going to struggle to get this doughed in?
I'm a little concerned we're going to get it to stay in.
Right,
I
okay.
don't mind doughed in.
Go on then, give it a stir. It'll go down. Right, so we've predominantly got Pilsner malt in here, and then a little bit of light Munich and some chip malt. I put chip malt in, Martin, because actually, for me,
like a bit of chip.
Love a bit of chip. It's going to give us that lovely head retention that we want. Go on, there's plenty of room left in there.
If you say so, James, you'll be doing the cleaning up, son.
Going in like a pro.
That is scarily close, James.
Oh, Martin, that is smelling lush, though.
You can't be trusted to be left alone. Renegade brewer.
Oh, look how close it is.
Yes.
Yeah, putting it to the absolute test today.
There's nothing big or clever about doing this.
Right, don't forget you need to put your mash additions in. No, that's the sparge additions. Nearly. Yeah, the one that says mash on the
I can see you writing.
Yeah.
So what we just put in, James?
So I already dosed the liquor with a little bit of AMS, and in there you've got some Epsom salts, some calcium chloride, and some gypsum as well, because we want the water profile here to be like classic for the style. We want it to be nice and dry, and we want to accentuate the bitterness of the hops as well. All right.
But you also want to be able to get a little bit of malt taste, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's why we've got the light Munich in there to just add a little bit of extra malty background to the finished beer,
and a little bit of colour.
Bringing your experience in there, Martin.
Yeah, my experience is not to let you do the water calculations now. Just wet the end of it.
Wet the end of the recirc, yeah?
Yeah. Bob it in, tell the grain father I've put the malt in, and watch and wait for all the grains to flow down the sides of the basket.
Okay, so timer's ticking down now. There we go. You gonna get the lid on? Nice, good work. Come back in an hour, yeah?
Yes, come back in an hour, see what mess you've made.
There we go, grain father's been beeping at us, telling us we need to lift the grain basket, hasn't it, Martin?
Certainly has, James.
Let's have a look in there. Oh, look at it, although that is very full.
Brimming,
yes,
is the word.
Yes. We had to actually drain a little bit of the liquor out, which we're going to add back. Martin's got a...
I've got a bit of a rogue plan to go with your rogue water calculations.
Some might call it a cunning plan, Martin.
Yeah, some might.
So, you're going to be all right lifting that by yourself?
No, you're going to have to put that camera down.
Right, go on then, put the hook in. Muscles time. Ready? Look at that.
Yeah, there's a bit of grain escaped. Wonder why that could be.
I don't know what you're talking about, Martin.
I think someone brimmed it a little bit too much and it's gone down those holes where the handle goes in. So the master plan is, James, the work that we have in the trug down here, I'm going to add a little bit more to it to kind of warm it back up again, and then we're going to do a bit of lautering.
Okay, right, over the top through the grain bed before we do the sparge.
Before we get started on the sparge, we're going to lauter a little bit so that we filter out the grain a little bit.
How many times are you going to whiz this through?
I'm going to wait till it runs as clear as it can be.
That's looking pretty clear as it is.
You can see a few bits of grain in there, which I want to try and get out and get back into the basket.
You're a clever boy, aren't you?
Well, someone has to recover these little situations you put us into.
It's Martin to the rescue. You've done a good job there, watering it with your truck.
Well, by my calculations, we should be sparging with 22 litres of water. So that means you put 6 litres too much in there that we had to deal with.
Okay, all right.
There's a reason that software tells you to do certain things, James, and that's why you follow it.
All right, okay.
Right. Additions.
Sparge water additions going over the top of the grain bed.
Okay. I'm going to start sparging it now, after having lautered it about 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, and actually that worked a treat to get out some of the grain particles, so yeah, well done. Right, so we're done with our sparge now, Martin?
All sparge liquor's in there. We're now just waiting for the last of it to drain out the basket, and then by your water calculations, it'll probably come flowing over the top as well.
Right, so grain basket off now, Martin. You're going to press set. There we go.
There we go.
We're at 91, so we're now ramping up to a boil.
I'm going to give it a bit of a stir, make sure it's all the same temp. Because obviously temp fluctuates from top to bottom.
Yeah, and as we can see, we're quite full again.
Yes.
The curse of me and my water calculation strikes again.
I'm going to get some lipo hop in this as well, because I really don't want to boil over on this on top of everything else.
Boil over, Martin? We would never have a boil over.
Yeah, I don't want it to be like brewing with Rob.
Right, Martin, so it's just a 60-minute boil for the recipe. We've got no other hop additions now until we get to the 10-minute mark, all right? And at that point, we've got 20 grams of strata and 20 grams of mosaic to go in, all right? So we just need to keep an eye on this while it's coming up to a boil, and then from there, we'll be back for when our hop additions go in.
James, one last thing before we walk away. Let's do a quick pre-boil gravity check.
So this is you checking to see whether I've screwed the efficiency with my dodgy water profile.
Well, yeah, we just need to kind of suss out how long it's going to have to boil for to get rid of any excess water. Actually, you've not done too bad. That's 1050.
Okay,
So we should be all right.
We're aiming for 10:55, so
Yeah.
you know, after the boil, that should be good. It's that point, Martin, where we need to add our 10-minute hop addition. There's 2 bags of hops down there on the table. You've got those 2 there,
Yep,
20 grams each.
yep.
One's mosaic, one's strata. Get those open.
Oh, man. Never tire of smelling like mosaic.
No, and actually mosaic with strata, for me, I had a beer the other day with it. It was absolutely banging. In they go. Right, so we've got to the end of the boil, right, and we've hooked the chiller up, yeah?
Yep, got it down to 80 degrees.
Yeah, ready for our whirlpool addition?
Yes, so I'm just going to unplug the chiller, get the whirlpool arm on.
Yeah. So we've had the chiller running to first of all sanitize the chiller, and we've had the whirlpool arm submerged in the hot wort as well to sanitize that. We've got mosaic and strata, 50 grams of each going in. Go on then, Martin, get them in. And we've got half an hour on the whirlpool addition, mate. So now is probably a good time for us to get our fermenters ready.
Right, James, we've hit just below 40 degrees. I'm going to knock the cold water off, and I'm going to turn the pump off. And we're going to put an amount of wort into this this fermenter. And, you know, because you can't eyeball this because it's not clear plastic, I'm going to set a timer. So we'll do 5 minutes each one.
Okay, yeah.
And that way we can kind of try to get an even mix, because you want to keep going backwards and forwards, because the wort will obviously vary throughout the kettle.
Yeah, we want to make sure we get a good distribution of the sugars, right?
Yeah.
And our theory is that by chilling the wort down to about 40, by the time it's then transferred into the fermenters, it's going to be close to pitching temperature.
Yeah.
And we know these yeasts can be pitched at higher temperatures, right?
Yeah. These are kind of like 30 to 36 degrees.
Yeah.
And there's been reports from like brewers who have used these of like fermentation being done in like 36 hours on that Mango Madness.
Right, okay. Well, we could be done quite quickly then, couldn't we?
Yeah, we could be drinking this in a couple of days.
And we've obviously got a dry hop to go in as well. Midway through fermentation, so
yeah, it might be tomorrow.
Yeah, it might be tomorrow.
Right, James, that's the wort in both of the fermenters.
I know the smell. First off, Martin, smell of this wort. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it comes out.
It smells really good.
It does.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got roughly about the even amount.
Yeah.
But other than taking out and using, it ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
We're just gonna have to make an educated guess.
We have done a gravity reading though, haven't we? Using Anton Par Easy Dens.
Yeah.
And that's come out at 1054. So actually, we're only 1 point off of where we were aiming for. Given my slight miscalculation with the water at the beginning, I'm quite pleased with that. So thank you for nailing it.
I think we've made some good little judgments along the way. But that's what brewing's all about.
Should we get them in?
Yeah, let's get them in.
Right. We're going to time it so we get them in together at the same time. Ready? 3, 2, 1. So we're going to get these with some heat mats around them, kind of covered up. We want to try and be aiming for a good temperature of at least 30 degrees for fermentation, because we want to see just how quickly they can perform.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a warehouse, so we're going to have to cover them, like you say, get the heat belts on there. Just really kind of hope of how high we can get these.
Yeah, we'll be back shortly and see how we've done, right?
Can't wait. James, after watching that back, all I can say is thank God there's a beer in the glass in front of me. That was a day and a half.
It was. Thank you for rescuing the brew day again. My junior brewer techniques kicked in there. I made some mistakes. Anyway, we did end up in a position where we ended up with a split batch in the fermenter at 1054, so we were only a point off of where we were shooting for at 1055, and we've got 2 beers in front of us.
They look great, One's looking a little bit more foamy than the other, like holding its head a little bit more, but the colours look great on it.
Yeah. Just a touch on the finished beer before we jump in and do some tasting notes. So they're both fermented at the same temperature, which is around about the mid-30s, finished really quickly. I think fermentation was done in 3 or 4 days. We dry hopped, then cold crashed for a little bit, transferred into a keg, and they've been sat on gas for 24 hours on the same gas line off of one regulator. So they've been at the same PSI, so they should be carbonated to the same level. So that'll be really interesting when we jump into some of the kind of review of these beers. Another little note on the fermentation performance though. The high voltage has attenuated higher than the Mango Madness. So high voltage has finished at 1010, which gives us an ABV of around about 5.8%. Mango Madness, however, has attenuated higher. So we finished at 1013 over here. So actually that means that we're at about 5.4. So we can already start to see the degrees of separation creeping in with these 2 yeast strains. But I think now's high time for us to have a little bit more of a review of the actual beers, don't you think?
Yeah, so which one's which and which one do you want to start with?
So on our left is high voltage, your right. On our right, we have the Mango Madness.
Right.
So before we jump into tasting or aroma or anything, let's just take a quick look at the colour and clarity.
Now, you've not put any finings into these. You
Nope.
literally cold crashed for 24 hours and packaged it.
Yeah. Now, that was on purpose because I didn't want to skew the yeast's performance by adding finings into the high voltage, for example.
Yeah. And you also wanted to kind of show that it's a quick turnaround.
Yep.
This is done in less than a week.
Yeah. Now, if you look at them side by side, actually, Mango Madness, that looks like a juicy New England style pale ale IPA, right? It's opaque. There's a lovely haze to it. So you can see that yeast strain is definitely suited to that style.
Yeah.
Now the high voltage, it's not pin bright, right? But we wouldn't expect that after the short turnaround time and a very short cold crash.
You could easily stick some Browsol in that keg though, and it'll just drop pin bright.
Or just leave it for a bit longer. However, it is brighter. You know, I can see through the glass. I can see the bottom of the glass, whereas on the Mango Madness, you just can't. Juice bomb, right?
Yeah.
Should we have a sniff?
I've already had a little go. I couldn't resist.
Right, I'm going to start by going in on the high voltage. I mean, that's clean.
You can smell the hops, but that's
You really can, yeah. And it had a really nice like hop schedule in there. We had some Centennial, we had some Strata, some Mosaic, and I'm getting all of those hops shine through. Now let's have a sniff of the Mango Madness.
Yeah, stone fruit.
Yeah,
You get it
yeah, definitely.
on the aroma, and you know, obviously there's a lot of hops in there, but there is a different aroma to this beer to this one, even though they're both exactly the same beer. Which one are you going to taste first?
I think we should taste high voltage first, as it is the cleaner of the two.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. I'd say that's a West Coast Pale.
Yeah, me too.
You know, it's got that bitterness from the flex.
Yep.
It's got loads of hop taste and aroma. There's no yeast ester.
There's no yeast ester, there's no yeast character. Wow. That's, as it says on the tin, clean. Right, let's pit it up against the Mango Madness.
Wow. That is packed full of fruity esters. Slightly sweeter.
Yeah, well,
Obviously the attenuation
Yeah.
you've raised.
what I would say is that actually the water profile we used for both beers was the same. So it's maybe not as soft and juicy as you would expect from a New England, but we weren't shooting for that with our water profile. I think if you rebrewed this one with a softer water profile, you'd be bang on for the style.
It might just be me, but there is a slight difference in body on the two beers. You know, this does feel slightly thicker.
Yeah, I think that's that attenuation again
Yeah.
creeping in. The other thing that I've noticed with both of them when we've got them side by side here is head retention. And again, you know, you think that actually head retention is predominantly down to the grist, but the head retention on the Mango Madness is significantly stronger than on the high voltage.
You know, and they've been carbonated exactly the same.
Yeah.
But it's almost like that's holding the head and the bubbles more than that. Really weird.
Yeah, that for me, that is just beautiful.
So that's your favourite, is the
Yeah.
Mango Madness?
Yeah. What about you?
No, I think I was going to say exactly the same. And, you know, it might be just the day that, you know, I fancy something really juicy and hoppy. They're both really good beers, though.
Absolutely. I could imagine that the one that we made with high voltage on a hot summer's day around the barbecue, that would get destroyed. So there's two key takeaways for me on this experiment. First is, as a home brewer, being able to experiment with your yeasts. Being able to do a split batch like this, or brew the same beer twice, but use a different yeast and end up with two very different beers at the end is a really exciting experiment, and something that every home brewer should try at least once, if not twice. But the second takeaway for me, Martin, is just about the speed that you're able to turn these beers around in. Now, you were chatting to some commercial brewers about how quickly they were able to get some beers out using this.
Yeah, I spoke to one commercial brewer who was able to use Mango Madness and turn a batch round in fermentation time, 36 hours. So then you just got to cold crash it, if that's what you want, and then actually package it. So you, as a home brewer, can do exactly the same as that, but also it's giving you the advantage of no need for fermentation temperature control.
Yeah.
Because they don't stress out at these higher temperatures.
I'm really interested for next steps for us, Martin, to be able to take high voltage and try it out in a lager.
Yeah, I mean, that's the next step for me, is the fact of, right, we've tasted these on a kind of plateau beer recipe. Now let's go refine a recipe that suits that strain, because we know how it tastes.
Yeah.
And again, with this one, you know, I can see some great recipes we could turn around quick with this.
Me too. I think that actually this recipe, but with a water profile suited to a hazy pale ale or IPA, I'd be really interested to see how that turns out. Thank you for joining us on this video and watching our experimental brew with these two new exciting yeast strains from WHC. Now, if you've got experience of brewing with these yeasts, or you've got questions about anything we've covered here today, drop them down in the comments below. We will get back to you. Don't forget as well to subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell for notifications so you can stay up to date with everything we're doing here at Malt Miller HQ. And you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Cheers.
Cheers.